Hey guys, so I'm coming at you guys today with a Magic video, and I know I haven't done one in a while, but I just want to do a discussion on really an archetype, or really just a type of deck in Magic in general, aggro decks, as a matter of fact. And a lot of aggro decks do, in fact, exist in Modern. One of the most famous examples is Elves, because Collected Company just made that deck really crazy, along with things like Nykthos and Shrine to Nyx and whatnot. However, there are other aggro decks, including Goblins and White Weenie and Green-White Hate Bears and Merfolk, which, by the way, Merfolk recently won GPLA thanks to Hurkyl's recall, really. But that's besides the point. Aggro decks in general tend to play very low to the ground creatures that, just hit for damage very early on, and that's either just kind of flood the field, and that's how you generally win, with just a lot of bodies and throwing them at your opponent. Literally throwing them at your opponent in the case of Goblins with cards like Goblin Grenade, but that's besides the point. Aggro decks, since they all play very low to the ground creatures, are very vulnerable to sweepers, and cheap sweepers at that. Things like Anger of the Gods and the Supreme Verdict and Damnation, and even Tron can put down Oblivion Stone turn 3 and wipe the board of anything that you might try and kill them with. The issue here with aggro decks is that they don't have a lot of recovery plays. I mean, Elves, granted, have Azuri to regenerate. Green-White Hate Bears kind of make it to where non-creature spells cost more to cast, so it gives them an extra turn or two for them to swing in for damage. The things like Goblins and White Weenie, Merfolk inherently play blue, so they're okay, I suppose. But things like Goblins and White Weenie, they're kind of in trouble when it comes to sweepers because they don't have a ton of recovery plays. So, it kind of begs the question. Merfolk is such a successful aggro deck because it balances control, tempo, and aggro to where, they just win because it's a very... and granted, you do have to be very coordinated with your plays of Merfolk. Don't get me wrong on that. It's a very skillful deck in my opinion, but you do have the inherent ability of blue to control sweepers and things you don't want your opponent to have that you can't handle. And so that brings me to the question: should other aggro decks splash blue for things for control? Now, I know that a lot of monocolored aggro decks really just want monocolors for more consistency, but I really do feel as if splashing blue can solve a lot of their issues. Elves usually play green-black or green-white just for creature removal. Goblins stay mono-red, and of course White Weenie is mono-white. Now, like I said, Green-White Hate Bears, they're a little better off because they just inhibit your opponent's ability to play non-creature spells. And Merfolk have control. However, I think blue would benefit aggro decks, at least splashing it, a lot. Especially in Modern, because not a lot of aggro decks exist in the current standard format with Shadows over Innistrad. It's a slower format. Turn 5 and 6 is where a lot of the bigger plays occur. But as I was saying, I think in Modern, especially with all the different fetch lands that exist and the access to numerous colors, especially with cards that just generate mana, I think you can successfully and very easily and capably play blue just for cards like Mana Leak and Negate to get rid of your opponent's non-creature spells. Even Dispel gets rid of instants that might kill your creatures, or your key creatures, I should say. So I think that the decks that really should and could splash blue is White Weenie and Elves. Now, I know splashing blue and Elves is kind of an issue because really you want creature removal, and I don't think playing Sultai Elves is really all that what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't really maximize your winning capabilities. A lot of these aggro decks are very proactive and they don't like playing reactive blue cards. However, I think being able to save a board of 21 ones versus something as simple as Drown in Sorrow is a lot better than just trying to push for damage. Now, let's break down some of the decks one by one. Elves are kind of a flexible archetype. They, like I said, can prefer to play black or white for creature removal. You know, black for things like Dismember and Go for the Throw, and white mainly for Path to Exile. White Weenie is very simple. You know, there's not a ton of deck choices to make. You produce a lot of soldier tokens and cat soldier tokens and whatnot, and then you just give them an Anthem effect. However, this makes you very vulnerable to sweepers. Something as simple as Aetherize, which, by the way, isn't really played in Modern, but would get rid of all those tokens, and you would have no recursion whatsoever. You'd have an open field against whatever they wanted to play. And that is quite the issue, in my opinion. So, something that's monocolored, now granted, Elves is really mono green, and White Weenie is obviously mono white, and I think white and blue kind of go together easier than green and blue, but both decks can at least splash blue for negates to stop disruption spells. I think it's pretty efficient, at least in my opinion, that you could, your opponent wants to play Cryptic Command, well, you know, you can just pay 2 mana and get rid of that, and your play still goes through, you know. And green and blue, at least in Elves, you can play interesting man lands like Lumbering Falls, and you have a 3/3 hexproof, which is very nice, and I think that accommodates aggro well. And granted, there aren't a lot of blue elves out there, but like I said, it's mainly for control. White Weenie, blue and white go together pretty well. You do in fact have some blue and white soldier creatures. Blue produces tokens in the form of things like Thopters that fly, which is really good. And I think that would be an interesting deck to put together. There is a lot. Now, there are a couple of other decks. Like I said, green, white, Hate Bears, I don't really believe needs control that much, but I think there is an argument for Bant colors. And Goblins is where I see the most issue splashing blue. There aren't a lot of blue-red goblins. There are things like Goblin Electromancer, but that does not aid in your creature production. And goblins play burn spells already, and I think having to take out some creatures to ensure that other creatures go through isn't really what goblins want to do. I mean, they can even chain things like Goblin Grenade and just deal damage before everything gets swept out. But there's still the issue of losing out on your creatures, and then your opponent can just, I don't know, delve and play a 4/5 for 1 black. We all know him, the Banana King Tassiger. So, my argument in summary, I suppose, is that aggro decks should try and splash blue, simply to stop sweepers and to make sure that their plays go through. You don't have to play Cancel, you don't have to, which I don't think Cancel sees a lot of play in Modern, but you don't have to play things like Cryptic Command. All you really need to do is play things like Negate and Dispel to ensure that your creatures stay alive, basically. That will be the wrap up of this video, and I will see you guys in the next video. Hope you enjoy.